somebody was trying to somebody from our team was. They had some tablet, yeah.
Wait, you're not going to check out till later. Because I got my fish. We'll do that. All right.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome. Can you hear me?
No.
Because it says.
I think, is the thing on?
How's that?
There.
Oh, there we go. There you go. It's not that large a room, but I think it's easier to hear me this way. Welcome, everybody, to our afternoon session. For us, it's been an absolutely wonderful weekend, and we still have this afternoon to go. What? You're wiggling your... Hi.
They were saying hi. They were saying hi.
My old friends. Ah, okay. Anyway, our surprise guest is Matthew Hall. Matthew Hall is, as I've been referring to him, he's Dark Shadows royalty. He's the scion of Sam Hall, who wrote the screenplay for House of Dark Shadows, which was filmed here at Lyndhurst. And his mother was Grayson Hall, Dr. Julia Hoffman. He's a double whammy, and he just gave me the most wonderful gift. This wonderful photo of Joan Bennett that Sam Hall bought for $1 somewhere. But I just adore Joan, and you know, we've lost quite a few of our Dark Shadows actors. And Joan was one of my favorites. Of course, Jonathan Friend and Louis Edmonds and Humbert Estrado. We'll be talking about all of them. But I want to introduce Marie Wallace. And let's call her Broadway royalty. I love to be able to say she was in 8 Broadway shows, got her start with Ethel Merman and Gypsy, and she celebrated her 90th birthday in May. And Sharon Smith. Oh, the baby of our bunch. A baby, I know. I met her when she was 10 years old, so yeah. Welcome. We both have silver hair. It's just a thing with us. Anyway, we're going to start with Q&A because that gives us a chance to talk about all of the things that you really care about. And I think I'm just going to say one thing, a couple of things before we begin. That white dress over there on the mannequin, that belonged to Laura Parker, and she's photographed at our 50th anniversary here at Lyndhurst, wearing that dress with her portrait that was in Dark Shadows. And her daughter, Caitlin Hawkins, mailed it to me and allowed me to display it here. So we have a little remembrance of Laura with us. We lost her 2 years ago in October. So this is a dress made by Michael Hanna. It's a replica of the ball gown that I wore in the ballroom scene, the party scene at House of Dark Shadows. And Michael Hanna made Laura Parker a dress too. Maybe one year we'll have that one here. Let's just start with Q&A. Okay, who has a question? Oh no, oh thank God. What would we do? Okay, what's your question? What happened
to the original Willie?
What?
The original Willie.
Oh, all right, the original Willie Loomis was a lovely guy. We were in Uta Hagen's acting class together, so I was delighted to see him come on the show. Jimmy Hall, and I don't know what happened, but maybe it was a little difficulty remembering lines or whatever. But he's a wonderful actor, and he was replaced with playing Willie Loomis by Johnny Carlin. And that's really all I can say. Very often we have Jimmy Hall showing up at the at the festivals, and he and Johnny Garland sit together and gab. You know, they're great. They were great friends. Anybody else? A question?
Have you any costumes or artifacts or anything for the show or the movies?
That's a good one. All right. Did any of us keep anything from Dark Shadows? Any costume or anything? There we go.
I never kept any costumes, but I had always wished that I had kept my teeth, my fangs. But I didn't, you know, we had ourselves fitted at the dentist. Well, we didn't just buy them in the 5 and dime. They were really in there. However, you couldn't really talk with them. So you had a scene, and it seemed like you were talking. I mean, you were talking, but nobody realized that fangs weren't sticking out. So then the camera went on the character that I was talking to, and then I put my hand in my pocket and go, and then the next thing they looked, and there I had, yeah, and I did it. So, but he couldn't talk. He could say maybe 2 words, but nothing more. So that's what I wish I had.
When I was a kid, I was on the set a lot, and Vinny Lascalzo was in charge of putting the fangs into Jonathan's mouth, and Marie would obviously do her own fang work. But I, as a child, wanted fangs. I knew that there was somewhere a Rolodex with the name of a dentist who would give me fangs, and I never had the shall we say, courage enough to actually like go to my parents and say, "Can I have fangs?" And they would have said no.
Oh, all right. Well, if we're going to talk about fangs, it slipped everybody's mind that when I was bitten, I would turn into a vampire. I was a vampire for maybe 2 minutes. And of course, Laura Parker and everybody else went off to the dentist to get fangs. I didn't. And it was the morning of the show when they realized that I didn't have the fangs that I needed. So Vinny Lascalzo and I came up with a solution. He took these fingernails, the little fingernails, false fingernails that you buy, the plastic ones, and some eyelash glue. And then as Jonathan was biting me in the neck, he was on his knees, polishing off my eye teeth, sticking the false fingernails with the eyelash glue on my teeth, and so that then they were so close to falling off, but it was magical. We did it we just had to do it the one time. So maybe it wasn't worth a trip to the dentist. Yes, it's worth a good story. Sharon, no? Nothing? You didn't keep anything?
Keep anything except my script.
We kept our scripts. So I think I've got 1 through 10 and a few others that were fun, and I kept those. So do we have another? By the way, is Robin here? Oh, my neighbor, she isn't here yet. Okay.
How did you wall code with the TV that was live?
Oh, okay. All right, everybody knows that our show is live, so Marie, what was it like doing live television?
That was, yeah, here we are. Is that all? Yes. Well, I had come from the stage, and I'd done a few walk-ons and stuff on television, but nothing really. And it was very difficult. The most difficult part was talking, because you had to be this close. That's an odd feeling, you know, because you don't do that in life. You don't stay that close. But if you don't, which I found out as a photographer, if you have space in between, it doesn't look good. So the closer you are, the better. But that was so unnerving at first to me. And the same with the camera coming in like this, you know, especially when I was being created on the operating table. Well, I had my eyes closed, so that didn't bother me. But anyway, that was the worst, hearted. No, that's all right. No, that's okay. I'm not going to fall. I'm perfectly adequate with my sitting. Yeah. So anyway, that was the hardest thing, I thought, to be so close. But you get used to it. And the other thing is that you have to remember You cannot get up fast, because if you get up fast, you're out of the frame. Then there's photographing this down to here. So you learn to sort of stand up even though you were in a hurry, slowly. But little tricks like that, technical. And you get used to it in a couple of weeks and everything was fine. That's it. Oh no, you weren't on the show. You just wished you were on the show.
I guess I really didn't know the difference. I was just following direction. I did what I was told. The one rule that I did know was we weren't going to stop, so don't go out of character. But other than that, I wasn't unnerved by it. I just knew that's the way it was. It was a game. It was a game, yeah. It was like Marie referred to being on the stage. I mean, I knew that you just keep moving. You don't, go, uh-oh, I messed that up, can I do it again? That doesn't happen, so. It was tense for the adults, I believe, though. I would think so.
It was like it was like summer stock on speed. You learned your lines very quickly, and then whatever happened on camera happened. And yes, there was that little bubble of excitement that kind of, we sometimes call it fear, that came up right before you were going to go on, because you just didn't know what you were going to do, and what could happen, what could go wrong. And when we were doing all of the special effects, we very seldom skipped the rehearsal of the lines, the dialogue, and we went straight to what they call the gags. We went straight to doing, rehearsing for the prop men and the camera, not for us. So, it was always a little tense making. Do we have another question? Oh, I'm going to take you. What about David Selby? Yes, of course. He's fine. David Selby, believe me, is just fine. I've been very lucky to be doing a little. I guess it's a video. You can watch it on YouTube. It's called What Friends Do. My longtime friend Susan Sullivan. I met her when we were bunnies together in the New York Club, and David Selby. She worked with him in Falcon Crest. And we used to, Mitch Ryan was part of our little company, and we did these half-hour shows that Susan wrote, and we're still doing them. And of course, Mitch Ryan passed away, so David Selby and I suggested Sonny Van Dusen, another wonderful actor, and we're still doing these. So I'll be seeing David Selby in about a week, because we'll be rehearsing another one of these, and I'll actually see him in person. So he's doing well. Anybody? Come on, comment. David Selby. I worked. Well, there, go for it.
I worked with David Selby a number of times, and of course he abandoned me as Jenny. So in the play, poor thing, Jenny was very unhappy about being with David because he was so mean to her. But as a person, he was just charming and lovely, always. And even when I see him in these last years, he's just wonderful and funny and nice. He's a nice guy. He's a Southern gentleman. Yeah, so it was a pleasure to work with him. That's it.
I never worked with David Selby, but I'll throw in a butt. But we used to have, there were Dark Shadows trading cards. And my favorite was My Mother is Magda the Gypsy, and the line on the card was, "Quentin, you have no future."
I'll tell you, there was one really interesting thing, very little known fact, and that is very often an actor was brought on the show to play a ghost, and for the first up to 6 months, never spoke a word. Do you know who the other person was?
Kate Jackson.
Kate Jackson, right. She was a student at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, and I graduated from there. Alexandra graduated from there, and then Kate. And Kate came on the show while she was still a student, and they wouldn't allow students, to be in shows, but they agreed that she could still be a student. if she didn't speak lines. So she came on the show as well. For several months she didn't speak. But she wasn't the only one. It happened a few times. So that was our Quentin, silent Quentin, sitting there brooding. Okay, another question? Yes?
How far in advance do you get your scripts?
Oh,
Marie?
how far in advance did we get our scripts?
Well, I don't know about you and the people who are on every day almost, but I always got my script at least a week before. And I always, I was like Al Pacino. Al Pacino used to receive his scripts, whatever it was, a stage or anything, and he would look like this and say, shit, 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 my part. Shit, 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 my part. And that's how he went through his script. And so in a way, I would do that too, but not call it that. But I would fold the part that I wasn't in. And so the only thing I would see was the continuation of my part. And everyone asks about, did you save your scripts? Well, I thought when the show was over that day, that was it. We weren't going to do anything about anything else. And so I just gave them away to the fans that were waiting outside and gave our signature. Now, of course, you find them on eBay and they're selling them for hundreds of dollars. But anyway, I never thought that anything would happen with Dark Shadows, not because it wasn't good. Nobody took a soap opera and played it again. But Dan Curtis was smart enough to know that it would happen. And here we are, what, almost 60 years later, Kathryn? And it's still going strong, which I'm very happy about.
I don't know if everyone realizes this or not, but this seems like an appropriate time to say it. Dark Shadows, as we all know, was unlike anything else at that time. It wasn't your mother's soap opera. But bigger than that, Dark Shadows was the first soap opera ever to be syndicated. It was the first soap opera that I'm aware of that was made available to the general public in the form of the VHS tapes and later the DVDs. And as Marie alluded to, no one, I believe, at the time, not the creators or the actors or the writers, ever imagined that Dark Shadows would have had the impact that it has had and continues to have on so many people on so many different levels for so many different reasons. I mean, I can't tell you why. I mean, I can give you a lot of thoughts on it, but I can't tell you why. It's really something very special.
Well done. No, it's quite remarkable. We're celebrating our 60th anniversary next summer. Believe it or not, Jim Pearson is here and he'll be organizing an event for next summer. It'll be in Los Angeles, and if you go on any of our Facebook pages or wherever, you'll see it announced. It'll be on my website as well. We don't know when it's going to happen, but it'll be in Los Angeles. So, in the summer. I tried to pin down Jim on it yesterday. I said, do you know when? And he said, well, probably sometime in July, maybe June or August. So that's as close as we got. Yes. She would have been a what? Oh, yes. Yeah, well, you know, Kate didn't join the show until, Jim, how much later did Kate Jackson join the show after it started? Wasn't it about 3 years? Yeah. So she was never in contention to play Victoria Winters, although obviously with the long dark hair, she kind of resembled Alexandra. And the reason why, and by the way, all of us who auditioned for Dark Shadows before the show actually started, we all read for the role of Victoria Winters. And And it was funny because I remember toward the end, one of my last auditions, I went to Dan Curtis's office and I saw Louis Edmonds, Nancy Barrett, and sitting in the, and Alexandra sitting in the anteroom. So obviously they narrowed it down to us. And I wore the blonde wig because Dan Curtis felt that I too closely resembled Alexandra and as Maggie Evans. So I wore that little short blonde wig. And then one day I came to rehearsal, and it was months later, and Dan saw me with my long dark hair, and he said, "What are you wearing that wig for?" We'd completely forgotten. So the next day, Maggie Evans suddenly grew long dark hair. You've got another question.
I get to speak loud, so everybody should hear me. This question is from Marie. They supposedly originally wrote a role for you at the beginning of House of Dark Shadows. I was wondering why that never happened.
He says that he had heard that they originally, and maybe Matt, you know about this too, they originally wrote a role for you in the House of Dark Shadows movie, and you didn't do it. Can you explain?
I can explain. I had left Dark Shadows on a Wednesday. Thursday, my agent called me to audition for Somerset. And he said, it won't be as much fun as Dark Shadows, but you'll be starting as the original cast. So I said, oh, sure, I'd love to do it. Audition for it. And so I did audition for it, and I received the part. Now, fast forward, and it was about 2 months later, and Dan Curtis's office called me to do a part, a small part, in the new movie. And of course I said, oh, I'd love to, but I have to get time off from, Somerset. Well, they wouldn't give me the time off. And so I said to Dan, I called him and I said, can you give me a different date for the filming? And he said, oh no, we can't do that. When you do a film, you have to stick to those times that we set up. Now, go backwards a little bit, and if you had I had a commercial once and said, could you change the date? He said, oh no, you can't change your date on a soap opera. So as long as it was not changing his schedule, it was okay. So I couldn't do it because of that. So it would have been nice. I don't really know what the character was because I never got to see a script. But I did have all those conversations with him. And that's what happened. That's why I didn't have a part. Anyway, I wish I did, but I didn't.
Okay. Do we have a question for Matt? Anything about his mom or his dad?
I just want to know, did you get to play on the set or play with the other kids on the set, or did you ever ask for a role in the show?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Okay. All right, elaborate.
I was in grade school, and I'm an only child, and my parents are only children, so we were kind of eating, breathing, and sleeping Dark Shadows. I mean, it was kind of, both my parents were in it, and everybody they knew was in it. And I felt Dark Shadows envy because I wasn't in it, and I really wanted to be. And I later got a chance when I wrote the 1991 show, which is a whole other series of stories. But yes, David and Sharon were very busy, and I would come home. I would basically go to the set after I would come home to the set because it was about 5 blocks from my house after school, and hang out in my mother's dressing room, which had like these ABC branded curtains in it, and hang out. A story I tell, and I'm sorry if people have heard it or read it on my blog, is that once I was there, and Vinny Mascalzo, the makeup man, had to stay in there while the thing was going in case anybody's makeup needed touching up. And of course, because it was live to tape, nobody's makeup ever needed touching up. And so he was bored, and I was bored, and he said, hop in the chair, and he made me into, he gave me like Spock ears, and he gave me a long, like evil-looking nose, and aged me, and gave me wrinkles, and did my hands, and I wandered around 9th Avenue terrorizing school children. and I got home, and my mother tried to get me to take off all the makeup because I had to go to school the next day and it was going to wreck the bed. And I was like, no, I really want to go to school like this tomorrow. It'll be dented, but I don't care. And she's like, no, you have to get it all off your face. So, which was a shame. And I don't think there are any pictures of that, which is, you know, but Vinny was a really talented man, and he did that. So I also, I was annoying enough that I would go and I would sit in the control room and watch as Leela or Henry Kaplan like called the shots, you know, during taping, and eventually they got sick of me and they put me in another room with a bunch of equipment that obviously didn't mean anything, and they let me, like, it had an oscilloscope and it had a screen of what the feed from the cameras were, and I could press buttons and change the oscilloscope, and I would sit in there and do that while the grown-up people did real work in the other room. You know, and there was the alternative to that was I would go home and Sam Hall, my father, would be lying on his back in our living room with Gordon Russell and Ron Sproat and the other writers, and Sam would be lying on his back pulling his eyebrows and trying to come up with you know, beats for the characters, for, you know, the moment of show they were trying to work out. So yeah, I was kind of surrounded by it, and it was fascinating to me. And when Gordon Russell actually was another writer, was on the final episode, and he was the second footman, and he named his company Second Footman, and he. I knew Gordon, of course. He taught me the phrase, "Don't let your meat loaf," which I still think funny, actually. Nobody else, that's okay. You had to hear him say it. And I remember looking at Gordon and thinking, he got on. He's the second footman. I could have been the third footman. But then I got my chance in 1991 because Dan Curtis read my first novel, Negative Logic, and he was working with Sam on the 91 show, and he said, I read your kid's book. Do you think he wants to work on the show? And Sam said, ask him. So he did, and I did, and that was a whole other adventure. You know, that was fascinating. So that's
a great story. Oh my God. So 3 generations of writers in your family. Yes. That's great. Okay, another question. Yes?
This is a question that's come up a number of times online regarding who was actually the head writer, or was there a head writer on Dark Shadows, or was it just kind of a group of writers that just kind of came together, or did it come down from Dan Curtis?
It was Dan. Dan. Sam and Gordon were kind of more or less co-head writers, but Dan really structurally, functionally was the head writer. And I have described it in earlier iterations, working in 91, working with Dan, and he basically would act out all the parts and dictate dialogue. He didn't do that with Sam and Gordon because really there was a functional thing of the writer. Like, they would work on the blocking together. They would work on what they called blocking, which was the outline of the script. And then they would assign, Sam would go off and do script, you know, 331, and Gordon would do 332, and Ron or one of the other writers would do 333. So they broke it up. So each script did have an individual flavor. But on the 91 show, it was, I mean, even as we were all there, Dan would basically act out all the characters and throw his voice back and forth, and it was really his mind a lot of the time. He had enough on his plate that, and he listened to writers. He listened to, like, Sam and Gordon and the others about how to do things. But I think he really did have functionally and, you know, realistically final say on everything. Sam was later head writer of One Life to Live and, you know, other shows too. But really, although it's unlabeled, it was Dan.
Ask for another question.
Somebody, another question.
about Kate Jackson's first date. She first appeared July 28, 1970, in episode 1067. It's Kate Jackson's first
Cool.
date.
I love, actually, one of the things I really like about you guys is the level of expertise. I mean, you have over here.
IMDb?
The question came up as if the revival series was proposed by Mark Perry back in 2020, the COVID pandemic. Is that still on the table? Could it still happen?
I do not know the answer to that. Revival series, post-COVID revival series. Does anybody know anything at all? Post
Mark B. Perry's.
Oh, yeah. Mark B. Perry is a wonderful writer. Some of you know that he's just come out with a novel that's doing really well. It's called Introducing, what was it, Dexter. It's a wonderful novel. Mark B. Perry, for about 5 years, along with Amasia Entertainment, which now owns the rights rather than Warner Brothers, tried to get a production, a new iteration of Dark Shadows on the air. And it was picked up by WB and a network, and the script was altered to suit their needs, and that didn't work out. It's actually been sold about 3 times. That's Mark B. Perry's script. Has been sold about 3 times, but each time it just doesn't work out. And then another wonderful writer, John Logan, stepped into the mix, and that hasn't sold either. So eventually, we're hoping that it does get picked up. But timing is everything. And there have been so many iterations of Dark Shadows. If you look at Dark Shadows, it's the granddaddy of contemporary horror television and films, because there's so many writers who've done Buffy the Vampire Slayer and all kinds of things who acknowledge that Dark Shadows was their inspiration. But as far as bringing Dark Shadows as we know it back, that hasn't happened yet. We'll see what happens. Stay tuned. How's that for an answer? Okay. All right. Yes.
You're talking about doing live television.
Yeah.
And of course you're doing films. And this is not just being on Broadway, plays, films, TV, different processes.
Oh, all of us have had our share of experiences. I've done everything from rep in England, theater and just everything. But film, television, stage, I don't have a preference. Marie, let's ask you. I mean, is there one? Yeah.
Everyone always asks about that. And I love the theater. That's how I started. But I love doing television too. I mean, it's not very different. I mean, from terms of acting, you do the same preparation. It's the same thing. The only thing about television is you gotta be a little more technical. On the stage, we might be this distance or we could be that distance, and it's okay. We do fine as long as the inner life is going on. And I think it's the same thing with television. As I said, when I first went into television, I watched the shows a week later, and I found, I'm articulating too much with my mouth. On the stage, that's good. I was jumping out of the chair instead of going slowly, even though I was supposed to be in a rush. So there's those technical differences, but your approach to it, your characterization, all the work you do beforehand, it's all the same. To me, what do you think, Sharon?
Well, I certainly don't have the experience that you have, but in my own way, between doing Dark Shadows, which technically was live, in my 20s, I did community theater, so I was on that stage, and then as an adult, I've done independent films, which again, you're back on camera. And for me personally, I find that when you're on camera, or as an adult, you need to rein it in, bring it close. For me, exactly. On stage, I get to be this. Like, I love to be on stage. Give me a microphone, you know. I mean, things are a little different now because you got the, you know, mics here and all that stuff. But it's different. You get to project. You get to be big. And then when you're on film, you need to roll it back and be a little bit more intimate and more real and more natural. I personally think that I'm better at the characterization, the big thing, to be animated, you know, to really put it out there and try to let the audience know where you're going with that. But on screen, you gotta bring it in.
And one thing I just want to say, sometimes a great, or wonderful at least, film actor, he might fade into the woodwork. I mean, he's too small. You can't be too small on the stage. You can't be too soft, you know, you can't talk like that. But you can, you know, so those are little technical things. But I think that's one of the things. So there's a fine line because you don't want to pull back too much and just be boring, you know, and you don't want to articulate too much so that you're phony. So you find the fine line. And after a while, when you do it long enough, you just know. The body knows. And you just do it without thinking. And that's the best time.
My mother was happiest when she was doing plays. There was something about the live theater, and also the kind of regularity about it, and the camaraderie, and the whole vibe of it, that really she was at her happiest in terms of work when she was doing plays.
Grayson was wonderful. As you know, she was nominated for an Academy Award for Night of the Iguana. And she worked with a great director, Jose Quintero, on Broadway. And she did The Balcony, yes?
She did Morgenet.
Yeah, Morgenet. Yeah, she did a lot of work. And yeah, we were asked a version of this yesterday. And my response, as far as the process, Maria is absolutely right. It's, you know, you do the same kind of work, but it's how you project it. And many of us who did House of Dark Shadows had never done feature film before. In fact, Dark Shadows was the very first time that I've been on television. So going from live television, where it is incumbent upon you to do your very best work in one take, you're not going to get another chance. So there are nobody's coming in for a close-up, and it's just one long master shot. When we did House of Dark Shadows, on the very first day, Jonathan Frid hadn't really done film either. And for me, it was obviously my first opportunity. And Dan Curtis had to give us a quick lesson in, you know, film 101, because we were so used to doing everything, and it's a question of survival, you know, getting that take right. And Dan pointed out to us that, you know, when we were doing that long walk and talking back and forth, you know, and that was a master shot. He said, settle down, I'm coming in on a close-up, I'm coming in on a two-shot, I'm going to do an over-the-shoulder, so, you know, save your best stuff for that close-up. And also learning that when you're doing a master shot, it's to lay down a track and get it right. And then it's a close-up, it's just, you're doing your work smaller. Every little flinch, every little whatever, raise an eyebrow, and it's, you know, on a big screen, it's, you know, huge. So all of those things. I'm going to also mention, one of the reasons I love Joan Bennett so much is that she really looked after the young women on the show. She had 4 daughters of her own, and so she looked after us. You know, Alexandra and Laura and Nancy, Maria, all of us, in that same way. And a couple of times she took me aside to say, Katie, you know, when we're doing, you know, you're doing your close-up, just look at the downstage eye. because if your eyes are going back and forth like this, which is natural, we all do it in real life, on the screen, you're going to look like a crazy person. You know, your eyes are going to be doing that. So just focus on that downstage eye. And a couple of other just little things that she told me, and quietly. I mean, she took me aside, actor to actor, to give me that advice, which I just loved. So, and I'm very grateful to it. Never forgot a bit of it. So, is there another question? Guy.
Sharon, can you tell us a little bit about your independent film On a Country Road? Because it sure isn't Shara Collins in that movie. It's an 18-minute short.
There you go.
Thank you. Yes, I was at a Dark Shadows convention, and a couple came up to me and introduced themselves as independent filmmakers, and that they had an idea. Well, at the current time, they were doing a program, a series called Ragged Isle. I believe that you can still find it. And as Dark Shadows fans, in that series that they created and produced, there are what they call Easter eggs. Is that the correct term? In it that refer to Dark Shadows. So as a Dark Shadows fan, if you get to see Ragged Isle, you will pick up a few name references, a few other things like that, which I thought was cool. But they asked me would I consider being involved in a project that they were thinking about doing, and I said sure, why not? And we ended up doing a production that is called On a Country Road, and I get to be my alter character. I won't tell you exactly what happens because that kind of ruins the whole thing. But the character that I play is not sweet, is not little, not cute at all, which was kind of fun. I got to be a little something different. What should I say about Ragged Isle? I mean, except to encourage you to go online and find it and watch it. It's really good.
I'm not sure about Ragged Isle, but On a Country Road.
Oh, I'm sorry, On a Country Road.
It's on YouTube.
Is it? You can.
Yes.
It's available.
Yeah,
on YouTube.
tell them to search On a Country Road and then your name, Sharon Smith.
I don't even know these things. Okay, On a Country Road and then Sharon Smith, SMYTH, and you'll be able to find it. And it was really fun doing it. It rained the entire time that we filmed it during the nighttime, but it wasn't real rain. It was a couple of guys with hoses and sprayers and whatever, and I'm not used to working during the wee hours of the evening, so the whole thing was kind of interesting to do. I was exhausted by the time I was done and felt damp.
It's very well done and it's very suspenseful.
Yes, very suspenseful. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It was a fun project for sure.
For Matt Paul, do you have any insights as to where the second season of Dark Shadows might have gone if they had gotten renewed? 91.
There were planning documents for it, and I'm embarrassed to say that once that was over, I kind of packed them away and locked that part of my mind up and went to the rest of my life. Because it was kind of a disappointment that it didn't continue. But you know, professionally, you just sort of move on to the next thing. And I then wrote my second novel after that. So no, I don't. I expect Dan, to be ruthlessly honest, I expect Dan, we've spoken of this perhaps in some of you may have heard. Dan, one of the issues I think with the 91 series was that however wide open it was in terms of the ideas originally promulgated by Dan and Sam, and I was there fairly early as well. Dan kind of really sort of narrowed it down to emulating the old show, and my expectation, suspicion, and what memory I have of any planning documents for season 2 were that it would have continued in that vein. So I would not have been surprised. I would have been surprised if it had suddenly, you know, launched anything that was grossly out of the Dark Shadows universe as Dan kind of saw it.
I just wanted to say that one of the things about the original Dark Shadows is there was a naivete and a fantasy world about it. And when I saw the later one, I thought the vampire didn't have that kind of essence that Jonathan had, which was, I don't want to do it, I'm so disturbed that I have to do it, but I can't help it. And he was so vulnerable. But then the first night I saw the new Dark Shadows, and I did, I think, an hour program or 2 hours, I forget. He was so mean. I mean, he killed 3 women. Jonathan didn't kill 3 people in 7 years. So, you know, that was, for me, the difference. And that's why I love the Dark Shadows, because of the fantasy of it. That's all I can say.
Actually, I think you're absolutely right. I think that was an unforced error. I thought Benny Cross is a very talented actor, but I think there was a vehemence to him that was not in Jonathan. So you know, I think that definitely was. It didn't help him to start.
Yeah, it's pretty well known. Jim, maybe you'll corroborate this, but Jonathan did not want to do another Dark Shadows movie. You remember at the very end when, during the wedding scene, when Jonathan, you see Willie and so on, and the crossbow and the blood and all the rest of it. And then you see that bat flying off, and that was to denote that more to come. This story isn't over, the vampire isn't dead. And unfortunately, Jonathan, because of all of the bloodshed, he just felt it was too gory, and he did not want to come back to do another film. By that time, I was moving to England, so I wasn't in that one either. And I just think that the franchise got, even though it made a huge amount of money, it got wonderful reviews. Leonard Maltin thought it was fabulous. All of those things. I think the franchise was a little bit spoiled by all of the blood. I don't know if you agree, but it was too much.
I have a story on my blog, which is called Nantucket 73, and I urge you all to go there immediately and spend lots and lots of time. But there's a whole bunch of Dark Shadows stories there's stuff about my mom that's not Dark Shadows, and endless things about me because I'm completely self-involved. But it is, there are stories there, and I'm going to tell one now, which is a particularly vulnerable moment involving my father. Okay, so the second Dark Shadows movie, Jonathan is not in. And so that kind of gave Sam and free rein to kind of come up with something more, you know, different for the characters that were there, which was David Selby and my mother and Carlin and they really put their heart into it. This is a difficult story to tell, to be ruthlessly honest, but let's do it. And as I say, it's on the blog, so it's probably better told there than I'm going to do it now. And they did the whole thing, and the final cut was like over 2.5 hours long. And they had to take it to the head of MGM, as a man named Jim Aubrey, who I have Googled over the years since, and it turned out that he was not well loved by many people. And they took it to the head of MGM, and they screened it for him all 2.5+ hours. And at the end, he said, you have to cut an hour out of this movie by Tuesday. And Dan said, that's impossible. It was a 3-day thing, you know. Dan said, that's impossible. I suppose it was Wednesday then. But Dan said, that's impossible, it can't be done. And Jim Aubrey said, no, you have to do it. And Dan said, it won't make any sense. And Jim Aubrey said, quote, for your audience, that won't matter, unquote. my father and Dan sat in Los Angeles with an editor in an editor's room and tried to piece together a version of that movie that would work in an hour and a half. And that's why it's the best that it is. I mean, if you love it, great. But there's continuity stuff. There's and finally they presented it to Jim Aubrey, and he accepted it at an hour and 20 or whatever it was. And then my father got on a plane back to New York, and he sat in the first class of whatever airline it was, and he wept. And that's, because something that he actually had thrown his life into, thrown his heart into, not his life, but it's thrown his heart into, had been utterly destroyed. And there is a movement afoot to recreate the original, and that is actually happening. It's an ongoing project that Jim Pearson knows about. And that'll come out in a year or two, I think, in some variation or form. But anyway, that's just, since we were talking about Jonathan not coming back for the second one, that's a story about the second one.
There's nobody better to tell about that than you. That was a real blow to Dan Curtis. I think it's another reason why he just dropped Dark Shadows and went on to Winds of War and War and Remembrance and all of the other wonderful films that he did. But that was really sad that Jim Aubrey did that, especially after Dark Shadows had made so much money. It was a small film. It was done on a minuscule budget and on a very short time frame. And it made a huge amount of money, and it saved MGM the year that it came out. At least it saved MGM for another year. So it's really sad that the second film was treated so badly. Anyway, my good friends Robin and Malcolm Jones have arrived. So we're going to carry on with a bit more Q&A. Does anybody have a question? Okay, yes. Yes, of course. And I'm going to preface this by saying that my husband was in law school when I was doing Dark Shadows. He never watched it. He came upon it this last year on Prime. So we've been watching, and we started with those scenes where the vampire, lures Maggie and she's in the dungeon or the basement of the old house. And those are the scenes that we started watching. I'm going to say again that I am so impressed that 10-year-old Sharon Smith did such an incredible job. She was amazing to work with. I mean, 10 years old, and the interchange, was just, it was magical. I loved doing it. Now watching it, 59 years later, and seeing that storyline unfold, and it was just wonderful. And also, you working with David Hennessy, who at that time I think was 11. So yeah, he was a year older. So these two kids, 10 and 11 years old, and you worked with them as though they were adults. You never made any sort of concessions at all. I've often thought back on that. I hope it was okay, but they were wonderful. So my impression of those scenes, having freshly watched them, I think that the old black and white, we started out, we were always live, but we started out in black and white, and for my money, those early black and white scenes shows were some of the best that we did in the 4 years. Sharon, let's hear from you.
In case you didn't realize what the heck I was doing, my first scene with Kathryn, my back is to her, so I was standing outside of her cell playing with this wooden ball that actually was a styrofoam ball that was sprayed brown, which really, think about that, it's kind of hard to make it look like it has any weight to it, so I was lucky not to lose it a couple times.
But you were a ghost.
Oh no, it didn't matter. I just think it's funny because that's like one of the behind the things things that a 10-year-old finds funny and, you know, a fun thing to know. But yeah, I once again, I did what I was told. I had to, as Donna was saying yesterday, you know, the most important thing was to be on your mark, be where you're supposed to be so that they could get the picture of Maggie in the cell and me in the same frame. That was important, so I couldn't mess that up. But again, I think I had shifty eyes in that, even in that very first scene. You know, I'm doing this and I'm looking off stage and she's behind me stressing and there's things going on and you know, I kind of wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about what I was looking at or what was going on over there. Hence, once again, Sarah's shifty eyes. I had many opportunities after that to work face-to-face with Kathryn. And you know, as Kathryn said, I was there to do a job. I said what I was supposed to say, we responded off of each other, and everything was fine. And all I remember is looking at Kathryn, being, you know, basically this close to her, and thinking how pretty she was.
Still is.
She was a grown-up, she was pretty, she had long hair, like I was kind of, you know, jealous. I was just a little girl.
All right, thank you, Sharon. All right, another question. Who hasn't asked one yet? You haven't.
Sharon, were you really playing the recorder on the bridge?
Heck no. But I look good faking it, didn't I?
Yeah. And she was a ghost, so no, it was, they played the music and she did a good job of pretending as a 10-year-old. Is there another question? Have you asked one yet? No. Yes, what?
I would love to know if there were any storylines we would have loved them to develop differently, especially for your own character, but also for other characters in the show.
Well, I suppose I could say that I wish I hadn't jumped off Widow's Hill because that wasn't a pretty sight. But no, we were really happy, and I think we should reiterate here that Dan Curtis did all of the great stories in literature. Ours was an anthology series, essentially. We did Wuthering Heights and Scarlet Letter, Picture of Dorian Gray, and famously, I think one of everybody's favorite was when we did Turn of the Screw. And that was when David Selby and I did pretty much headlined that storyline. So it was, I don't think that young kids watching the show, running home from school to watch realized what we were doing, but they certainly responded to a good story, a classic story. So no, I think the writers wrote to our strengths, and we had wonderful material to work with. So I can't think of a single storyline that I would like to see told a different way. Good question. Thank you. Anybody else who's not asked anything? Okay. What would you like to ask?
When the show eventually went to color, every now and then after that, it was back to black and white. I just wonder why that.
I'm going to take that question as well. We started out in black and white, and because it was before color television, and all of the soaps were in black and white. And then when we were going to go to color, about a year after the show started, they actually brought in a truck that had all sorts of camera equipment in it, parked outside our studio, and we had to do color tests. And we were put in I don't know if anybody else remembers this, but we were put in green makeup and all kinds of things because they thought that color would distort us and they had to allow for it. And in the first episode that we did in color, we ended up in our normal makeup, and it was just fine. So that was the end of it. But I have to tell you, we spent about 2 weeks doing all kinds of tests to make sure that when we went to color, you know, you wouldn't be seeing purple people and, you know, green people. And very often we went back to, you'll see that we were doing all color. All of a sudden you see that we're in black and white. And the reason for that is that we were live, and what you were seeing were kinescopes. And a kinescope is when the camera photographs the image off a television monitor. So obviously you're losing a generation, and you never saw it as crisp as the live show. But when we did the kinescopes, literally filming the image on a monitor, they were put in big round tin cans, and they were sent through U.S. Post to Albuquerque, New Mexico, wherever the affiliate was. So that's what you were watching. And when the show went into reruns, they didn't have all of the color episodes, but they did have some of the shows that still went out to affiliates who were equipped to do color, only did black and white, and that's what got mailed back, and that's why you have a few episodes in reruns that are in black and white after we went color. Did I do a good job of that one?
Yeah.
But you know, we're talking about 60 years ago, and we have different technology, so thank you for asking that. Yes, this is
One cool thing about kinescopes, because mom like got a couple on very specific episodes that she was proud of, specifically one where she was basically alone throughout the entire episode, being scared by moving things and bleeding walls, and she had like one conversation with Nancy Barrett, and then spent the rest of the time freaking out at special effects. And she was proud of that episode because it wasn't an easy thing to do. And we got the kinescope, and eventually I saw the kinescope, and it had the original commercials, and it was charming. And that was actually a really nice feature of kinescope anyway.
But what Matt's talking about are the commercials for Pond's, Hazel Bishop, Rep soap. I'm sure some of you have seen those.
Some of them are sexist and all.
Yes, they were.
Really would not stand up for that.
That's true. All right. I know it's unconscionably warm in here, and I don't know if you've been seeing it. They've been putting out fans and trying to work on the air conditioning. Sorry about that. I think we're going to wrap it up soon and maybe do some photographs. But are there still more questions? Yes.
Shortly after those shows, we were a member of the Wallace cast called Providence.
I've never been asked about that before. When I moved to England, I was lucky enough to be able to work as an actress there. So I worked in the West End, but I also did repertory theater at the Bristol Old Vic. And while I was there, my agent had me meet Alain Resnais, a wonderful French director who had learned English so he could direct his first English language film, which was Providence. And David Mercer wrote the script for it. And he had cast Dirk Bogarde, David Warner, Elaine Stritch, oh my gosh, Ellen Burstyn. There were 6 of us in the cast, and I came in from Bristol and met him one afternoon, and he offered me the role, and he said, "But you must wear what you're wearing now," which I thought was it was just one of those funny, magical things, and so I ended up wearing that little dress in Providence. But the filming started just 2 days after I finished at Bristol. So there was very little time, but it was to get to Paris and prepare. And I was very lucky to be able to work with John Gielgud and David Warner, and I adored him, Dirk Bogarde. He was just wonderful. So thank you for asking that. I've never been asked that question. Anybody else, or yes? Oh, Robin, yes. For my role? In the very beginning, in the very beginning, we were all of the young actresses were reading for the role of Victoria Winters. That was the script that we read. But I probably had about 5 auditions, and then I had a camera test. And toward the end, when I went to one of the last auditions, I saw Alexandra Louis Edmonds and Nancy Barrett, and I realized they were, we were down to the last casting. And I had a camera test very early one morning with Mitch Ryan and another actor. And since I was the only girl there, I figured, oh, I got the role. And then Mitch Ryan was cast, and all of us were in that very first episode, and with Joan Bennett. Yeah. Any other questions? And then we're, I think, going to wrap this up and then we'll meet with you individually. Yes. You're very young. Yeah. When we first started, sorry, I'm going to take this one. When we first started Dark Shadows, we were doing what is known as a bodice ripper. It was very much just kind of like a Victorian novel, with the eccentric family on the hill. And then when Jonathan came on board, and we had a vampire, and we had Sarah, a ghost, and we had a phoenix and everything else, then the acting, I think, got more heightened because we were dealing with stories of the supernatural. And before that, they've been much more realistic. I think that's the best answer, but I'm going to ask my, yes. Well, the question is, when we first started, the acting seemed, more realistic. And then later on, it became, bigger. And I think that's the answer. What do you think? I think. Okay, this is for Ricky.
Dark Shadows was I thought that I would never get on a soap opera because I'm a little bigger than life and on stage, and that's good for the stage. But I always thought regular soap operas was sort of looking through the keyhole at the kitchen. So it was very intimate. It was as if you were visiting or sneaking a visit at someone's home. It was just very intimate. And I thought, well, I just don't fit in those things. So when Dark Shadows came, I thought, this is for me. Because it's, to me, in many ways, it was like the stage. Because they have started with the same kind of emotions, but then when you did it on the stage, it was very heightened. And that's what Dark Shadows was to me. It was a heightened, you stood up straighter, you talked fuller. It was just, it wasn't that little kind of, whispering and little stuff behind the back. It was just wonderful, and that's what I loved about it. So that to me was, I'm not quite sure what the question was, but that's for me the differences in those things.
I think that sort of broadness that gradually, I think that sort of broadness in acting and writing, for that matter as well, was what made Shadows Shadows. I think it got bigger than other soaps, and I don't mean that in terms of its popularity. I mean that in terms of its characterological, foundational, being. And I think that actually broke the mold. Soap opera was not the same thereafter. I think you know, I mean, I think soaps could reach for bigger things because of Dark Shadows. I know Sam went on to head write One Life to Live and a whole bunch of other things. You know, carried that with him. He was unafraid to go large, and I think that was in part because of at least the writing of Dark Shadows, and certainly that affected the acting as well.
All right, I think that we're going to wrap up the Q&A, but I have to thank the staff at Lyndhurst. They do just a magnificent job here, giving us. I know that you've been trying very hard to cool it down in here. Oh, I'm standing in front of the fan, but they created this lovely vignette here. We're going to go over and sit on this settee, and then if you want to take pictures, that's lovely. And then we're going to break out, and we'll be. You can meet us individually. How's that? Good. Okay. All right. You need your later. Okay.